Hi, I'm Karen Buchholz, registered dietitian nutritionist with the Home-Based Primary Care Team and Healthy Teaching Kitchen.
And I'm Megan Stouts, registered dietitian nutritionist with the Renal and Primary Care departments and also Healthy Teaching Kitchen.
And welcome to the New York Harbor VA Healthy Teaching Kitchen series.
Today we're going to be showing you how to prepare a few simple recipes, and we'll get you started to cooking on your own.
So one of the things that's important when starting your recipe is to, one, read it all the way through to know what's expected. And it's also helpful if you do what's called Mise En Place. What the heck does that mean? It means putting things in place. So we're going to cut up and prep all of our vegetables, fruits, spices, whatever it might be that you have. And then we also have a garbage bowl, so we can put things in the garbage bowl instead of running back and forth to the garbage can or cluttering up our cutting board. Which brings us to our cutting board. It is green, meaning vegetables. Quite often you'll use red to indicate meat, and by keeping each of your cutting boards separate, you're promoting food safety and not doing any kind of cross-contamination. Something that would be helpful to do first is to cut your vegetables and then your meat if you don't have separate cutting boards, so you don't contaminate your vegetables or your fruit. So here we have a red pepper, and we're going to cut that. We're going to talk a little bit about knife skills. The most dangerous thing in the kitchen is a dull knife, believe it or not. So holding the knife, you want to hold it at the base, and you want to put your fingers at the tip to provide more support instead of holding it like this. So you want to be up here like this. A couple of different hand things that you can do is, because we're going to cut the pepper in half first, we're going to use what's called the bridge. So you just take your hand like this, put it over, put the knife through, and cut down. And so then we have it in two halves. By having the garbage bowl here, I'm able to take the tops off, get rid of the seeds. If you eat the seeds, it's not a big deal, but a lot of times they're a little bit bitter and they're not flavorful. And then we're going to do that with both of them and clean out the ribs. This one didn't really have many of those white ribs that we often see. So then, once again, going to use the bridge, and I'm going to cut on the inside because it's not as rubbery as the outside with the red pepper or a green pepper or a yellow pepper or an orange pepper. What's nice about using all the different colors of pepper is it provides different antioxidants. Each vegetable has a different, and fruit have different antioxidants based upon the colors, which is why you always hear eat the colors of the rainbow, because each one does something different in your body. Now we're going to do what's called the bear claw, and we're going to put our hands down on here so we don't cut our fingertips off, and then we're just going to go down in a rocking motion, trying to keep the tip of the knife down on the cutting board. Now it's up to you how even the slices and the dices are. The dices are a little bit bigger chunks. If you were to mince, it would be much smaller. And if you cut them more so the same size, then they're going to cook evenly. If they're cut different sizes, then you are going to have a little bit different textures in your dish, as some will cook faster than others, such as the smaller pieces. You can always go through and do a little bit more chopping, especially if some of the pieces didn't get. And when you're picking up the food, if you scrape the tip of the knife against the cutting board, you have a good chance of dulling your knife faster. So you can either get a scraper, slide it off into the board, or go with the other side, and then you can put it in for your mise en place, and we'll have it ready to cook. So there is chopping a pepper. We have all of our ingredients prepped in mise en place, like we talked about before. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure our oven is, our stovetop is on. We're going to start it on a medium high. And what we're going to do is, you can put in a little bit of olive oil, you can put in some canola oil, or use a little bit of spray, just because we don't want anything to stick to the bottom, and it makes cleanup a little bit easier. Put that off to the side. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add, for this recipe, we are using ground turkey for our unstuffed pepper skillet. Now, instead of using turkey, you can use a variety of different meats. You could use ground beef as long as you're using a lean kind, ground turkey. You can also use tofu, believe it or not. Now with the tofu, one of the things that I like to do with it first is to freeze it, take the whole block, throw it in the freezer, defrost it, squeeze out the water, and it actually starts to look and have the texture of a ground beef or a ground turkey. So we're going to let this cook for a little while to make sure it's thoroughly cooked. And one of the things that's helpful to know is you want all the pink to be out, or you can use a thermometer. This one I picked up, relatively inexpensive. You can get one for less than $10. And you'll want to put it into, make sure it's not touching the bottom of the pan because then you're getting the heat of the pan. Put it somewhere into the middle of your meat, and what you will get is a temperature reading. For our turkey or chicken, we want it to be at 165. Okay, still got a little bit of cooking to do. Okay, we're going to pretend it's cooked and we're jumping forward. Okay, so we're going to just double check, stir it around a little bit. And let's double check the temperature. And we are at the desired temperature. So what we're going to do now is we are going to add rice. Instead of using brown rice, you could use any other type of whole grain. You can use something like quinoa, barley, kasha, buckwheat. And we just want it to cook a little bit with the meat for about 2 minutes. And the nice thing about using whole grains is that the whole grains have the bran and the endosperm on them, or the germ, so they have more nutrients, which they'll have more of the vitamin B's, and they also have the fiber with having the bran, which helps with, I know not too cool to say while preparing food, but it helps keep you regular, if you know what I mean. And it also helps with cholesterol, where it can help move the fat in your blood out instead of it clogging in your arteries. So those are some good benefits of having the bran and the whole grains. Okay, so once that is done cooking for about 2 minutes, we're going to start adding our wet ingredients. So we did put in uncooked rice because we are adding about, and that was about a half a cup of uncooked rice. We are adding a 15-ounce can of diced tomatoes with the liquid, and we are using low sodium diced tomatoes because we want to keep the sodium at a minimum. And then we are going to add about a cup of low sodium tomato sauce. And we are going to add the bell peppers that we cooked. We had 3 different types to help get a little bit of the color of the rainbow. And we added more of the sweet bell peppers. If we added a little bit of a green bell pepper, that would give it a little bit more bite. Okay, and let's give this a mix to incorporate the meat and the liquid. Okay, we're going to add the onions, which was about 1 small onion, which came out to be about a cup. And you can see how the mise en place really helps move the recipe along. And we are also going to add, back here, I have got some broth. Now, the broth, low sodium is also very important because broth is chock full of sodium. And if you're using the tofu to make it vegetarian, you can use a vegetarian vegetable broth, or you can even use that when you're using the meat, or you can use a beef or chicken, turkey, whatever floats your boat. We're going to mix it up, incorporate it all. All right, wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to need to add a little bit of our seasonings. So for seasonings, we We have Italian seasonings. You can also use basil, you could use tarragon, you can even use poultry seasoning if you want. You can flare it up with using some Mexican seasoning. We got some black pepper. We're going to do a dash of cayenne. And the recipe also calls for some brown sugar. So you can omit that if you want, especially if you're concerned about your sugars. This contains a tablespoon of brown sugar, which is 3 teaspoons. It's spread out over the whole dish. This makes for about 4 people, so everybody's getting a little bit less than a teaspoon. And just to know that women are supposed to have, at maximum, 6 teaspoons of added sugar a day. Men can have up to 9. And that's according to the USDA dietary guidelines, which just came out in 2020, which will last until 2025 when they bring out their new ones. And we are going to add a teaspoon of the Italian seasoning. You can add a little bit more if you want a little bit more flavor. We have a 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Now, ideally, we use measuring spoons. If you don't have measuring spoons, putting a little bit on your hand, tossing it in. If you only have regular teaspoons or tablespoons, just go ahead and use them. And it's most important, since you're cooking and it's not necessarily based on chemistry, you can make it taste the way that you want. So I'm also going to put just a little dash of cayenne in there for a little bit of spice. We're going to give it a little stir. And then the rice takes about 20 minutes to cook. So we're going to cook it for about 20 minutes, and we'll put a cover on that and let it cook for about 20 minutes until the rice is done. And then we'll see what we got. Okay, so we've been cooking this for a while, and we've been stirring it intermittently. Looks pretty good and smells pretty good. So to finish it off, what we are going to do is sprinkle some cheddar cheese on there. You can use whatever type of cheese that you want. We're using about 8 ounces. You can reduce the amount if you're concerned about the saturated fat. You can use a low sodium cheese. You can use a vegan cheese. We are also going to put some fresh diced tomatoes on top, just to add a little bit of extra flavor. Whoops. Got all those on the side, and we're just going to spread out the tomatoes. We're going to put the cover back on for the cheese to melt. We are going to turn off our stovetop, and we're just going to let it sit for 5 minutes. And then we'll come back to it and reveal the finished dish. All right, so let's see what it looks like. And voila, our cheese is melted. We've got the tomatoes, which are just slightly warmed, and so our unstuffed pepper skillet is now ready to eat. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you learned a little bit about cooking and enjoyed some of our recipes.
And if you have any questions about anything that we did today, please feel free to reach out to your PAC dietitian.